Hey guys, it's Khadroth again. Today we're going to be doing the Buster video guide for the Ishtarfest event, and we're going to start out doing things a little bit differently this time. So instead we're going to begin with some 4 CE comps, and actually not all of them will even be Buster in this case, but we wanted to present you guys with a couple more options in case you can't do any of the ones across any of the videos. Now, you might not have the capability of doing everything in each of the 4 CE comps. You might be lacking some of the units, but still they should provide you guys a decent template by which to do efficient clearing. Again, I'm going to say that the baseline is pretty much going to be 5 CE for everything, and you guys will see we'll have plenty of those and even some 6 CE comps as well. But the reason for that is because that's sort of the baseline of efficiency that is established by the other card types as well. So again, it's just something that we wanted to give you guys some more options, but ultimately the best option should be the 5 or the 6 CE comps. So let's go ahead and begin. To begin with, we're going to start off by showing you guys some templates of units that we believe can clear the first wave of every single one of the rounds. So these are units that should be very useful to you guys regardless of whatever comp you're using. They should give you guys options for building your own comps, and it's something we wanted to emphasize and show you guys, because with regards to accessibility of these guides and people being able to do the comps that we present, there are definitely some requirements for, you know, higher levels. It's what's necessary to be able to handle 5 CE and even 6 CE comps. In a lot of cases we require a lot of supports, we require a lot of craft essences, we might even require higher MP levels at times, but we wanted to give you guys as many options as possible. So here you go, just to kind of show you, here is Arash who can clear the first wave of every single one of the rounds. Now, we do have one assumption in here. That assumption is a 20% attack buff at minimum. So this is assuming someone like, say, Merlin buffing the unit, and that's going to be true across all of these except for one, and I will mention it when we get to it. But again, the reason we wanted to show you guys this is so that you can build your own comps. And just to kind of walk you guys through here, and again, part of the reason for this is because the Buster comps have so many different options, there's no way we can cover them all in one video. You guys are going to see this video is going to be very long anyways, I'm sure. So just to walk you through this here, the skill 1, 2, and 3 requirements here are the requirements just for that first round. You'll see that'll come into play, and I'll talk about it later. But so in Arash, we do require a rank 10 third skill. If you're using something like MLB Imaginary Element, you can probably drop this third skill here to rank 6 instead of rank 10. But remember, we are assuming a 20% attack buff here. So this is basically calculated in mind with, say, a 50% starting charge CE, plus Arash's 30% charge, and then some sort of external source of 20%. So again, you could get that by virtue of, say, Ozzy. You could get that by virtue of, say, Helena. There's other people that you could give that would give at least an equivalent to that 20% attack up, even if not the exact same. So, and again, you guys can see, especially with Arash, he is not that close on any of the rounds. So for round 1, the first wave here, even though it's neutral, he's still just going to slaughter it with some room to spare, with nothing else ever having a chance of living. With the round 2 and 3 nodes here, as you guys can see, the first waves is just all saber, so you don't care. That's Arash's natural niche. It's just going to be what he does a good job of slaughtering. So again, Arash is going to be a super useful unit regardless of what comp you have. And on top of that, that's partially because he dies and swaps in another unit, giving you guys basically a free Plugsuit. Now, next up is going to be Avicebron here, and remember, he's still going to be calculated with that same 20% assumption. And part of the reason for that is because Avicebron's max rank charge skill is 79.5%. So it's basically 80% when it rounds up, but you got to be careful there. If you don't have the skill at rank 10, you're not going to get that nice flat even 80%. So again, he's only going to need 20% charge. So you got to get the 20% charge. So we assume that a 20% attack up was also a fair assumption here. Now, looking at this, you guys can see in round 1, he's going to be great and easily handle it. Again, that's just for the first wave. And part of the reason is because we are assuming as well that his first skill, his Buster and Arts up skill, is going to be at rank 10 as well. You might be able to get away with not luring it, but remember, every time you don't lure it, you're gonna leave the enemies with even more potential health, and cause you to have to card even more. Eventually, if you cut down on it too much, you're going to have a failure, and that's what we worry about. Again, right here in round 2, you guys can see now it's Sabers, and he gets kind of counter traded a little bit. I'm gonna assume actually it's probably just that he's neutral against and doesn't have trade advantage, but again, you guys can see it's gonna have a little bit of an issue here. However, it should still be fine. It should be easily handleable with 1 card. And then in round 3's first wave, again, it's Sabers, but you guys can see it looks like he gets a little bit of a bump up in trait damage here, so he should be fine against everything in round 3 with nothing really having a chance of living. Plus, just in general, round 3 is not as bad of a deal as it has less health than, say, the driver in round 2. All right, now for the next one here, we've got Paracelsus, and Paracelsus is a very interesting one because not only can he clear a wave himself, but he can also help the party. So you are going to see here we don't require anything for his 3rd skill for this demonstration. If you're just using Paracelsus to clear the first wave of each of the rounds, you don't care about the 3rd skill. It doesn't really do anything for him. But the 3rd skill is still important to talk about because it's a targetable guts that gives 50% NP gain. So it can help out another arts or quick looper get the job done and refund enough later on. Plus the fact that his 2nd skill is a party-wide 20% arts up is also going to potentially help arts loopers. So these are big skills that you guys will want to have maxed out regardless. And as you guys can see, he's definitely going to struggle here. So you're going to want his damage skill, even though it doesn't scale all that well, pretty much maxed out. And again, remember, we are assuming as well a 20% attack up here. And that's partially because we're going to need 20% more charge because just like with the Avicebron, Paracelsus's first skill caps out at 80%. So at that point, you're going to need the 20% extra charge to be able to get him an NP off. And well, with the external sources that you could have to give that to him, a lot of them will have some sort of attack buff they can provide. So again, we feel like it's a fair assumption here. But looking at the first round, again, this is going to be your casters here. He is going to struggle with at least 2 of the enemies here, with the middle one being low enough health that he clears it 100% of the time. The only important thing you guys got to know here then is you need to make sure that you stagger cards to make sure you have a chance to kill in case this happens, in case both of them live at the same time. So with the follow-up cards after the NP, or possibly even before the NP, if it's all like Paracelsus's cards, you want to make sure that you stagger them somehow so that you can hit both the enemies. Round 2 is going to be your biggest issue. This is not going to really work. A lot of the time you will, but you cannot stagger enough for 3 if all 3 live. So this is going to be one where, yeah, we assume 20%, but you guys might want to find some sort of additional source of damage for Paracelsus. And that could be something like even leveling up your drop C that you have on him. That way he can get a little bit more firepower and possibly kill these lower 2 enemies cleanly. But again, you guys can see there's not too much health remaining, but if all 3 were to live, it would result in a failure for your 3 turn. And then as we get to round 3 here, really only the Shaking Ghost is going to cause him any sort of issue. So again, Paracelsus can be a really good option for you guys to handle wave 1 of each of the rounds, but also boost one of your arts loopers, or maybe even a quick looper just with the NP gain of the 3rd skill. So really nice unit, especially as a free-to-play option for you guys. And then last but certainly not least, this is not going to be a free-to-play option for you guys, but we have Nitocris. Nitocris is a 4-star unit. She is permanent, but she is an amazing farming tool for everyone. Now, Nitocris is the only one we didn't assume 20% up for, and there's a reason for that. For starters, her charge skill right here goes all the way to 100% at rank 8. So you don't need any sort of external source of charge to get her to be able to fire off her NP. However, the key to this lies in the first skill, and that is her death chance. So Nitocris functions a lot based off of her capability to death proc enemies and just wipe them out regardless of how much health they have. So as a result, you know, assuming a 20% attack up wasn't super necessary because we might be able to get through. And that's one thing we're going to show you here in a minute. As you guys can see, assuming no death proc here, and we did asterisk this on purpose because we do recommend you level it to rank 10 for maximum chances. But on round 1 here for the first wave, you guys can see she potentially leaves 2 enemies alive at NP1. Again, that's not too bad, just make sure you're going to stagger the cards. Round 2, it's basically going to be the same problem as Paracelsus. So you could leave all 3 enemies alive and then you would result in a failure. So you're going to definitely hope in this case that you death proc something. And again, death procs will speed your run up. You will basically not have to card anything that otherwise would have lived. So really nice and can bail you out of a bad situation. And because of that too, there's another thing I want to mention here right before we get to round 3, is the fact that if you were to fail in a Nitocris comp, because of the fact that you didn't have to buff her at all, it's not that big of a deal. You just have to accept the 4 turn, but then you start all of your buffing then potentially later on the later rounds if you're building a comp around her. So while you could get a failure with Nitocris, unlike the others, you didn't have to really pop any buffs that affect anyone else, so you're probably fine if it does somehow fail. And then as we get to round 3 here, again, it's all sabers just like round 2, but wave 1, it's only going to be the shaking ghost that requires her to pay a little bit of attention. And again, that should be an amount that's cardable at least with the 2 remaining cards that you have, so not too bad. Really, I think only the driver in round 2 would cause her any sort of issue in that regard. Again, I think you guys will see Nitocris is going to be a very viable option. She will actually get used in a lot of these comps that we're going to be showing off today because she is such an effective clearer of the first wave. So again, just to show you one more thing here real quick. So on screen now you guys are going to see something. We showed this to you guys last time as well when we used Nitocris a lot. You guys can see the death chance basically of each of the rounds here. So again, this is gonna be sort of the chance of having 0 to 3 survivors. So there's 3 enemies in a wave. 0 is obviously the best result because you death proc everyone and you don't need a card at all. But obviously that's gonna have a hard chance to pull off. But the thing I wanted to show you guys here is, again, for each of these rounds, basically as we go through it, we also have Nitocris's first skill level here. So it goes across from 1 to 6 to 9 to 10 here. And the reason we wanted to show you this, especially the difference here, is the difference that a lore makes. So be careful. Yeah, you know, a lot of you guys can get away with like a rank 6 or shit, even a rank 1 skill, but the chances are going to change dramatically. So if you have, for instance, on her, on the first round here, a rank 10 skill, your odds of having 0 survivors is 64%. Your odds of having 1 survivor is 32%. Your odds of having 2 survivors is only 4%. And that adds up to 100%. There is no chance of ever having 3 survivors. So having a rank 10 skill secures this. Having a rank 9 even also secures it. But somewhere in between here, all of a sudden, you've got a 1% chance of failure. So this is why it's important to level up Nitocris's skill, because this 1% chance of failure means 1% of your runs is going to get scuffed purely based off that, not even based off of you pressing the wrong button or anything like that. So be very careful with this skill. It's a reason we want you guys to level it so that you guys have the best possible chance here. But again, as we end up here in round 2, you guys are going to see all of a sudden now, regardless of how much we level the skill, there is a chance of all 3 people living. And it's going to be the same thing here in round 3 as well, where there's a 2% chance regardless of the level of the skill. So it's even more important to reduce the odds by having rank 10 on all of these. But it does mean that Nitocris is going to be most effective here in this first round, with the second and the third rounds here, her having at least a slight chance of failure. But do remember, like I said, if you end up with that failing, it's not the biggest deal because it just becomes a 4 turn, and hopefully you didn't have to pop any of the buffs to make it work prior to that point. In fact, in most of the comps, you should be able to delay buffs at least until the second turn. So it's a relatively risk-free 4 turn. It's not going to result in a 5 or a 6 turn because Nitocris didn't kill on turn 1. So it's one of the reasons that she is super useful to you guys. Okay, so now as promised, here we go. Here are going to be the 4 CE comps that we talked about. Again, this is to try and make this stuff a little bit more approachable. And you guys can see largely there's a template here that is very useful for a lot of you guys in determining how you want to handle a lot of the nodes. So this sort of setup right here works for a lot of people as long as you have a 50% charger, and that's going to be how this one's going to function. We're going to be using an MLB imaginary element and a damage CE with Plugsuit here. So as a result, we've now dropped to a 4 CE requirement where the rest of the CEs are all Lotto CEs. But again, the issue here is, yeah, you are going to be required to have your own Waver and Scotty and your own Astolfo, but this should work very cleanly for round 1. This is going to be a round 1 comp against the casters. And again, as you guys can see here, essentially the good part about this is with the staggered supports, you can have one and take the other on support. Or you could have both and try to like find your own Astolfo or something like that if you have a friend that can help you out, maybe an Arash or something like that, or even a Spartacus who would have drop C at least. So that one would actually be more ideal as something you might be missing. But skill requirements are going to be a little hairy, not so much on Arash, which most people should have done, but maybe on Spartacus, where some people might have ignored Spartacus prior to now. Or even Astolfo here, who we are going to require rank 10 on the 3rd skill here because it's 50% charge, as well as even on the 1st skill, because as you guys can see, even with the damage C, Astolfo's going to come up a little bit short there on the 3rd wave. However, this is just an NP1 Astolfo, so you guys can always make that better to make this a 100% comp. But again, looking at this, there's really not going to be any struggle other than possibly with the demon here on the 2nd wave. And again, one single Astolfo card will solve that. Again, any Spartacus card should make this cardable for the rest of the people. So there's really not any high risk of failure with any of these. Plus, remember, you are going to be getting stars per turn from Astolfo. You are going to be getting stars from the rotation of people with Arash and the Plugsuit. So a lot of that is going to happen because of the drop CE and people coming in bringing it. So it's going to be a really, really nice, easy comp as long as you guys have the pieces or can mix and match to get them. So for your party composition going across, I would start out with Astolfo, then Spartacus, then Arash. And then on your back line, make sure you have Waver and then Scotty. So basically for the turn order here, all you got to do on round 1 is pop Arash's charge skill. Even with an MLB imaginary element, as he NPs here, he is going to handle all the dwellers in this first round and this first wave. So really, really good. As we get into round 2, Arash's death should have brought in Waver for you. You're going to go ahead and pop all of Waver's skills on Astolfo. That should get Astolfo to 50% charge there. From there, go ahead and Plugsuit out that Waver for the Scotty that you're still missing. Bring her in, go ahead and use her charge skill on Spartacus. That'll get Spartacus to 70% now. Go ahead and use Scotty's defense down here. And then go ahead and charge Spartacus with his charge skill and then pop his buster up. And you guys should be good to go ahead and NP. Again, Spartacus should handle everything in the wave just fine. The demon will live 100% of the time here, but it'll only have 10k remaining, and with the defense down and at least 2 effective units, you should have a really easy time killing it. So as we end up in wave 3 now, you guys are going to want to go ahead and use Scotty's quick up on Astolfo. Go ahead and use Astolfo's 3rd skill, that's his charge skill, to bring him to full. Go ahead and use Astolfo's attack up, his 1st skill there, and then go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff. From there, you can go ahead and NP, and again, he should be perfectly fine to go ahead and just slaughter everything in the wave, with only Nursery Rhyme living 25% of the time with at most 6.7k HP. Again, it should be really easy for you guys to handle, really super affordable comp as well. Now then, for round 2 here, we are going to have Spartacus as a 4 CE comp now. Now, again, you guys are going to see, yeah, we are going to center around having a Nitocris for the first wave. That's going to be a high barrier to entry for a lot of you guys. However, otherwise, the comp is pretty affordable. We're going to be using Heavenly Demon Princess on Arash. That is going to be, again, a welfare craft essence that you guys are going to be getting from Summer 4 this year. Everybody should, as long as they play the event, have 5 copies of it. And then Spartacus is going to be using a damage C, so really the CE requirements here are not bad at all. Again, both of them are going to be assumed to be in P5 as free-to-play units. Nito, though, is only going to be assumed to be NP1. And then our supports are actually just Waver and Shakespeare. So you guys literally have your own Shakespeare. That should be good. So you guys can just take a Waver on support. Or if you have your own Waver, you guys can take Nitocris. So that will work to your advantage in that regard. You do have a little bit of flexibility here in this comp, especially since both of them wield drop CEs. It shouldn't be too bad, and Nitocris should actually be somewhat findable. Not maybe as much as some of the other casters, but there will be some people that have her up. So again, I think this is going to be a very, very nice comp for a lot of people. Okay, so for your party composition, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of what I would recommend as Spartacus, Arash, Nitocris, Shakespeare, and then Waver. Now, what you guys want to do for the turn order here in round 1 is you basically are just going to charge Nito to full, then pop Nito's first skill for the death procs. Again, at that point, you guys can just go ahead and NP. If you just have an NP1, you're going to struggle potentially if she doesn't death proc there. So that's why that first skills level is going to be so important. The higher it is, the better. But she can leave all 3 enemies alive. So you definitely want to make sure that you cut down on that. So again, if you have a higher NP level Nitocris, you should be okay, but be very careful. Now, as we end up in wave 2 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for Waver in the 5th slot there. Once Waver comes in, use all 3 of his skills on Spartacus. That should bring Spartacus to 50% charge. That should also give Arash 70%. So go ahead and use Arash's skill 3 now to charge himself to full. From there, you guys can go ahead and NP with Arash, and he will die, bring in Shakespeare, and slaughter that entire second wave, which only has 2 enemies in it. Now in turn 3 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and use the 20% charge from Shakespeare on Spartacus, and then go ahead and pop Shakespeare's Buster up, and then go ahead and use Spartacus's charge skill, and then his Buster up, and then go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and let Spartacus NP. With the damage he should again slaughter the wave, with really only Rama having any chance at living, and it'll be easily killable by anyone's singular card at worst. All right, now we end up with round 3's version of the Spartacus comp here. So again, this is going to be 4 CE. This is going to be again a super affordable comp. The big issue, just like with the one that we pointed out on round 2, is going to be people actually having their own Nito. That's going to cause them a little bit of issues there, and then potentially their own Waver. Again, like I said, you could take either one of these on support. Both of them have the drop CE, so it does make it a little bit flexible for you, but we'll see. It's one of those deals where I think you'd be much likely to find a Waver than you would be to find a Nitocris potentially, but Nitocris should be on some people's support. So again, if you maybe didn't have the Nitocris but did have a Waver, that would at least give you an option there. So as we go through the comp here, again, there's nothing too outstanding. Really, Nitocris is going to fare a lot better in this round than she did in the prior round. We are only assuming NP1, but you guys can see she basically doesn't leave anyone alive other than the Shaking Ghost here, and that is easily cardable amounts. So again, this is actually gonna be one where you really didn't need to have Nitocris's death skill leveled in that case. So you could get away with a very bare bones Nito in this one. Now, with regards to the rest of the comp, remember, we are using Heavenly Demon Princess here. This is a welfare CE that everyone should have 5 copies of if they played Summer 4, which will have happened not too long ago before this event. And then Spartacus himself will have the MLB damage CE on, so that should be really easily doable. You guys will get that from just opening your boxes. So as long as you guys have the skill levels here at the appropriate levels, you should be fine in this comp. And then again, we are going to be requiring a Shakespeare as the second support, so that's really not that bad. Everyone should be capable of having that. Okay, so for the party composition for this round, I want to make sure that you guys have it in the order of Spartacus, Arash, and Nitocris, with your 4th slot being Shakespeare and your 5th slot being Waver. Now for the turn order on round 1 here, you guys can just start out by basically saying, okay, I'm gonna pop Nitocris's second skill to charge her to full. If you think you need the first skill, go for it, but I'm gonna tell you in most cases you won't here. And then you can just go ahead and NP. Even under her own power, she should be perfectly fine and able to slaughter that first wave. As we end up in round 2 here, or sorry, wave 2, you guys are going to go ahead and use the Plugsuit on Nitocris and bring in the Waver in the 5th slot. From there, make sure you guys go ahead and use all of Waver's skills on Spartacus. That should bring him up to 50% charge, and then should bring Arash to 70% himself due to the overflow there. And then you go ahead and use Arash's skill 3. That'll charge him to full, and then you guys can NP and he will die. He will bring in Shakespeare in the process, but will easily handle the second wave with no one giving him any sort of issue. As we end up in round 3, you guys can go ahead and use Shakespeare's 20% charge on Spartacus. Go ahead and use his party-wide Buster Up. And then go ahead and use Spartacus's charge skill and Buster Up skill as well to bring him to full. From there, use the Plugsuit attack buff, and then go ahead and use Spartacus's NP, and you guys should be good. There'll be no chance of anything living, so this will be even better than the round 2 comp was, and should be really efficient for you guys in terms of 3 turns in time. Not so much because of the 4 CE. All right, now we're getting into the 5 CE and 6 CE comps, guys. So again, this is where it's going to start getting a little whalier. This is where it's going to start requiring some stuff. But remember, the goal of these guides is always to be as efficient as possible, as consistent as possible. So that's why 5 CE ends up being the baseline, and it's why 3 turns also is a sort of requirement whenever we look at these. Now, as you guys can see, our first comp here is going to be Nitocris and Drake with Waver and an Anni Blond. That is going to be really easy, really quick, and really nice, but the big issue is going to be having a Superscope. That is going to be the absolute whaliest requirement here, but the reason that this is such a nice one is because we don't even require a second support. You literally just need Anni Blond at that point and you're Gucci. So as we look at Nitocris here in wave 1, she will have a chance to fail on 2 enemies, but again, if you stagger your cards, you should be able to card that out. And on top of that, this is assuming no death proc. So if you level the first skill there all the way up to 10 on round 1, you can 100% kill basically everything and never have a chance where all 3 enemies live. That's going to be really, really nice in that regard. As you look at Drake in round 2, she will leave a little bit of health remaining on the demon, but again, shouldn't be too bad. We are requiring an NP2 Drake here, so that is going to be a little bit of a bump up, but otherwise it should be a super speedy comp. And again, here in round 3, Nursery Rhyme will have a chance to live, but it's even better than the demon. So the issue that you guys are going to have is going to be the demon in round 2, which has no chance of dying outright, so you will always require a card there, which will slow the comp down a little bit. But otherwise, again, this should be very, very efficient and simplistic in terms of button presses, and really, really nice and easy. It should be a very brain dead comp in a lot of regards, other than the fact that you might have to card some. With regards to the party comp, again, it should be straightforward. All you guys are going to do is have a front line of Nitocris, Drake, and Waver. In the turn order here, you guys are going to want to start out on turn 1 using Nitocris's first and second skills. That should bring her up to full charge. Go ahead and NP, and again, like we talked about, the Dweller should die pretty easily, but do stagger your cards if you don't think you have a good chance of death proccing and you're only using an NP1. Now, as we get to wave 2 here, you guys can just literally go ahead and NP with Drake. There's nothing else you have to do. Again, the Superscope will give her a lot of extra oomph, but with an NP2 Drake, the demon will live 100% of the time, so you will have to card that out. But you guys should be pretty good. And remember, Anni Blond does have a Star Bomb skill if you need it, so you guys can use that to your advantage here. Now, in wave 3, you guys are going to want to make sure you use all of Waver's skills on Drake. That should charge her to 50%. And then go ahead and use Drake's own first and third skills, giving her another 50% charge to full, as well as giving her attack up and NP damage up. And then go ahead and use Anni Blond's Mana Burst skill and go ahead and fire off an NP. Remember, if you get shafted on cards somehow, or you're worried about Nursery Rhyme living, you do have the Anni Blond's Star Bomb skill. So if you wanted to, you could try to stretch it with an NP1, but I would not recommend it. So again, I think you guys should find this to be a very quick and efficient comp. Other than the Superscope and the NP2 Drake, not really a high requirement. Next up, we've got a normal Kscope comp with Drake now. We are still requiring NP2, but we are using Merlin and Waver and a Plugsuit, as well as an NP1 Nitocris. This one's going to have a little bit lower barrier to entry in terms of whaliness, but you are going to have the 2 required supports. So essentially, you could mix and match. If you had your own Waver, you could try to find a Merlin, and if you had your own Merlin, you could try to find a Waver, but that is going to be one of the issues. Also, if you have a nicer Drake, or again, you just think that you're going to be pretty solid here, you might be able to get away with Shakespeare. It just sort of depends, but be very careful here in that regard. Otherwise, there's really no concerns other than Nitocris in round 1 at NP1. So again, remember that leveling that first skill for the death chance is going to be a little bit important. Plus, you could shore this up a little bit with an MLB drop CE, and it might actually make enough of the difference, especially if it's a leveled drop CE in that regard. Otherwise, we are requiring Kscope to be leveled to rank 20, and obviously, as always, we require foes to be on the unit. So for your party composition here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Drake, and Merlin, with Waver in the 4th slot. On turn 1, you guys want to make sure that you pop Merlin's attack up. That is his 20% charge skill. From there, you guys can go ahead and charge Nito, and you guys can go ahead and use the first skill if you're worried about death proccing. Again, from there, just go ahead and NP with Nito, and you guys should be fine. With the 20% attack up from Merlin, it should alleviate Nitocris on this first wave and her ability to kill. But do be careful, if you are working with only NP1 and a normal drop C, you might want to stagger cards just in case. But otherwise, again, even if you pop the first skill there, you guys should be good on terms of death proccing at least something. Now, in turn 2, you guys can go ahead and literally, because you just charged Drake to full, go ahead and use Merlin's Buster Up on her and NP. It's really that easy. There's nothing else you guys have to do. In turn 3 now, go ahead and Plugsuit out that Merlin for Waver, and go ahead and use all of Waver's charge skills on Drake at this point, getting her back to 50%. Go ahead and use Drake's 1st and 3rd skills. That will basically get Drake to 100% and then give her the NP damage up. And then go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack buff for yet another attack buff on Drake, and then go ahead and use Drake's NP. Again, she should easily handle the wave with no real issues whatsoever. Okay, so our next comp here for round 1 is going to be Arjuna Alter, aka God Juna here. This is going to be a Superscope Plugsuit comp, so it is going to be a little bit whaley in that regard, but we are only requiring an NP1 God Juna, and it should be pretty doable. We're also going to be requiring an NP1 Nitocris, as you guys are going to see in a lot of these comps, but it should be perfectly fine. Then we're going to be using Merlin and Waver staggered supports so that you guys can mix and match and take the one that you don't have. So again, otherwise, I think the biggest issue is just going to be that Superscope, and everything here should be pretty good. Like we talked about before, death procs are going to be a thing with Nitocris in wave 1, and really the real concern is going to be Nitocris here on wave 3, living basically 68% of the time and having 17k remaining HP as a maximum. So do keep in mind, because of the fact that we're going to be rotating people, you guys will at least have Plugsuit stars in some regard, and you guys will at least have God Juna's ability to soak the stars, which is going to be really nice. So you guys should be able to manufacture something here in this regard. If you have an NP2, it certainly will go a long way to shoring this one up, and I cannot recommend trying to experiment with Shakespeare over Merlin in this case because of that. You're definitely going to want all the extra oomph that you can get out of this comp. So this is going to be really, really nice though. Should be very quick and easy. So for your party composition here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, God Juna, and Merlin. From there, you're going to want Waver on the back line on the 4th slot, and otherwise you should be good. So for turn 1 here, go ahead and use Nitocris's 1st and 2nd skills. Again, the first skill is going to get her the death proc, the second skill is going to charge her to full, and that is going to give you guys enough oomph to handle that first wave, so go ahead and NP. Again, do stagger your cards if you're worried about the NP level of your Nitocris, if you're worried about the death procs of your Nitocris. If you have the first skill at a high level, again, it should really offset a lot of your concerns here, but otherwise make sure you stagger just for safety. Now in wave 2, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Arjuna Alter's first skill here, and then go ahead and use Merlin's 3rd skill, his Buster Up, on Arjuna Alter. From there, you guys can go ahead and NP immediately, and he will easily handle that second wave with nobody having any chance of living. As we end up in wave 3 here, now you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Arjuna Alter's second skill. Go ahead and pop Merlin's first skill to get him that 20% charge, and then go ahead and swap that Nitocris out for Waver. Go ahead and use all of Waver's skills on Godjuna, and that should charge him to 100%. From there, use the Plugsuit attack buff and go ahead and NP, and you guys should be solid. Again, Nursery Rhyme is going to be your big concern here. Just watch out for her and make sure that you get the best cards you possibly can to card her down. But do remember, if you're worried about it, because you did Plugsuit in the third wave, you can also pop Godjuna's third skill to soak the stars if you have busters. And next up here for round 1, we've got a Kscope comp for Arjuna Alter. The problem with this is we've now had to step up from the Superscope comp to an NP2, and that is largely due to the fact that the less charge has required us to use Waver and Scotty as staggered supports rather than, say, Merlin again. So that is going to be a little bit of a bigger issue for people. Sure, certainly you guys might have one or the other and be able to take the other one, and it's a little bit flexible in that regard, but the NP2 requirement is going to make it at least a little bit more whaley. And as you guys can see, there's really no concern other than here in round 3, Nursery Rhyme is going to live 94% of the time, so you guys are going to be carding her a lot. And the issue at play there is the 22k health remaining, so this one's going to be a little bit spicy. But do remember, thanks to Plugsuiting, you guys will get stars from the drop CE, and that should help you out at least some. It should give you guys an opportunity to be able to pop Godjuna's second skill there and soak the stars to him if he has the buster cards available. So should make it a lot more viable, a lot more doable. But yeah, sometimes you might foreturn with this comp, so be careful. But again, if you have a higher NP level of Godjuna, if you've grailed or gold foed your Godjuna, obviously it's going to handle this one nice and easy. So again, just keep on the lookout for that. Oh, also, I did say that, but be very careful. A grail and gold foe will not offset the requirement for an NP2. That will actually perform worse than an NP2. But it would certainly shore up an NP2 that, again, if you were grailing and gold foeing your NP1, it's not going to perform as well as an NP2 will. But an NP2 grailed and gold foed would certainly make this number right here on Nursery Rhyme a lot more tenable. So for your party composition here now, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Godjuna, and Waver with Scotty on the back line. Go ahead and make sure to start out for the turn order by popping Waver's second and third skills. That is going to charge Godjuna to full, and it's also going to give Nitocris a little bit extra firepower here. As a result, you're not going to care anything about the death procs even with an NP1 Nitocris. So go ahead and now pop Nitocris's second skill and then go ahead and NP. And again, she'll easily handle the wave and everything will die 100% of the time. Now in wave 2 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Arjuna's first skill and then just go ahead and NP. Again, he doesn't really get any extra buffs here for this other than Waver's attack buff, but he should be fine with an NP2 and should easily handle the demon in that wave. Now in turn 3, you guys can go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nito for the missing Scotty, and then, or again, another Waver if you have it. And then from there, you guys can go ahead and use Arjuna's second skill to get him the charge, and then go ahead and use Scotty's second skill on him, as well as Scotty's defense down if you have it. The good news here is that Scotty's defense down is going to give you guys another debuff, which should help shore up Godjuna in case his debuffs fail to land somehow on Nursery Rhyme. So it gives you another opportunity to make sure that his damage is maxed out from that first skill. Go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack buff here and then NP, and you guys should be good. Again, the thing to watch out for is just going to be Nursery Rhyme. So if you need to, pop Godjuna's second skill and soak the stars to him, but otherwise you guys should be good. Next up, we have a very interesting comp. This is probably going to be the one that you guys have heard a little bit about. This is where I think Chen Gong is actually going to be doable and usable for a lot of people. And the reason for that is because Chen Gong is, well, sort of meant to buff berserkers. He's really good in that regard. He gets an additional buster up, he gets additional crit damage specifically for berserkers, so it's really good. That's going to help Arjuna Alter actually be able to handle this at NP1, and it should be really nice. again, the issue here is going to be that we are going to be using a Kscope on your Chen Gong. We're going to be requiring your Chen Gong's third skill to be at rank 10 to give Arjuna Alter the maximum power he can get. And then we're also going to be requiring a very eclectic group of supports. But to explain this, the requirements are basically Helena, Waver, Altera, and Shakespeare, but Altera could potentially be subbed out for a Lan Ling. If you do use Lan Ling, then it does probably need to be a 10-10-10 one, but you guys should be capable of doing that because the big focus is going to be getting Chen Gong damage for wave 2. However, again, you guys could use an even better support if you can fit them. Party cost, as always with Chen Gong, is going to be an issue, as again, we are trying to make this work with the maximum amount of drop Cs. This is going to be a 5 CE comp. However, there's also the standpoint of this comp is malleable from the standpoint that you can actually drop it to 4 CE by using an NP5 Spartacus and a damage CE instead. So if you just lose the drop C that we're going to be using on Arjuna Alter, you can certainly shore this up. And again, that's another concern here with this. As we look at Nursery Rhyme's remaining HP, that is beginning to get up there and get to be a lot. But remember, you guys can use an MLBC and you can level that C. It's actually all attack scaling for once, so it's fairly good. In fact, you'll see Christmas has the same sort of treatment. In fact, Christmas's C is even better, but again, this is gonna give you guys some options for upward mobility of the comp and reducing the sort of RNG and potential failure from not getting the right cards. So should be really good, really usable. And again, the support should be at least decent for you guys since we're not requiring 5-star supports on everything here. Instead, you know, you guys could end up taking your waiver, or you guys could try to take any of the missing pieces, but again, with stuff like Altera and Helena, it's going to be a little bit harder to find them on a support, but still should be a very interesting thing. And the good news is, at least say in round 1 here, you might be able to get a friend to put up an Altera for you with the drop C on, because you're probably not going to see anyone necessarily using archers in round 1. In round 2 and 3, that is not going to be the case. You're almost definitely not going to be able to find an Altera, so be very careful. But the good news about this comp is it does work for all 3 rounds. That's another hilarious part about this. So again, I think this is going to be a really doable comp for a lot of you guys, because it's, instead of just looping Chen Gong, it's a Chen Gong Arjuna Alter hybrid. Okay, so for your party composition, this is where this is going to really matter. You guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Chen Gong, Helena, and Arjuna Alter. Remember, Chen Gong yeets the leftmost person that isn't himself. So you need to make sure that Arjuna Alter is in that far right slot, and it doesn't really matter where Chen Gong is, but because he's going to be doing a lot of the yeeting and you're going to be doing a lot of button presses, it's probably better to have that person in the second slot. From there, the back line needs to be Waver, Shakespeare, and either Santera or Lan Ling, whichever one of those you guys use. We're going to be doing the setup with Santera though. Now, as we get to the turn order, you guys are going to want to go ahead on round 1 here and use Helena's first and third skills. That should get Chen Gong a little bit of an extra card type up, as well as charging him to full with that Kscope, and then go ahead and NP with Chen Gong. He'll refund to about 25%, but he should handle the dwellers easily. He will yeet Helena and she will die, bringing in Waver from that 4th slot. From there, now in round 2, you guys can go ahead and use Godjuna's first and second skill. That'll get him some extra firepower and charge him a little bit. And then go ahead and use Waver's first, second, and third skills on Chen Gong. That should bring him up to about 75%. Go ahead and use the Plugsuit now on Waver in that second slot and bring in the Santera from the 6th slot, or Lan Ling if you have him. And then go ahead and use Santera's first and second skills on Chen Gong, or use Lan Ling skills accordingly if you have him. Again, that should get Chen Gong pretty much to full. He'll be at 95%, so go ahead and pop Chen Gong's second skill to charge both him and Arjuna Alter. From there, go ahead and NP one last time with Chen Gong, and he will yeet Santera or Lan Ling there and go ahead and handle that second wave easily, with the demon causing him no issue here in round 1. In turn 3, you guys are going to want to go ahead, now that Shakespeare has come in, use his charge skill and use his buster up skill on Arjuna. Now go ahead and use the Gong 3rd skill on Arjuna. At this point, you guys should be good to pop the Plugsuit attack buff and NP with Arjuna. Again, he should easily handle the 3rd wave except for nursery rhyme, so that's going to be the issue that you guys are going to have. But remember, you guys can shore that up. You guys can also, thanks to the stars that are being generated from all the people coming into the comp, basically end up soaking the stars if you have a buster card as well with Arjuna Alter's 2nd skill. Next up, you guys are going to see here for round 1, we have an Iskandar Superscope comp. We are only going to require NP1, and that's largely just due to the amount of NP damage that Iskandar naturally does himself. He has 3 different steroids that all stack multiplicatively with themselves, so he naturally just hits hard. It does mean that in theory he doesn't scale as well as other people do with additional buffs, but it does also mean that, again, he just doesn't need very much help to hit hard. So very good in that regard, and you guys can see we're actually able to get away with both Waver and Scotty rather than, say, like a Merlin, which again you guys are going to see a lot of buster units need. Now the issue here is that's a good thing because Iskandar doesn't have charge in his kit. Iskandar literally with a Superscope handles 1 NP, and then with the 50% charges from the other 2 supports handles the other NP. So again, the fact it doesn't need Merlin is a blessing in disguise because again, he is still able to handle everything at a 100% clip here with no real struggle. But that does mean that Superscope is also going to be the only option for Iskandar here. He's not going to have anything else he can do. There's not going to be a normal Kscope variant of this one. Now, with regards to the node itself, again, you guys can see even NP1 Nitocris handles everything perfectly fine, and that's due to the amount of buffing that is rolling around here. Again, Iskandar can actually help out Nitocris significantly, so you don't even need to have the 1st skill leveled here for Nitocris. Otherwise, again, you guys can see waves 2 and 3 are 100% as well, so this is just pretty much gonna be a flawless comp that never has to card anything as long as you have the requirements. Okay, so for the turn order, you guys are gonna want us to go ahead and start out with the front line of Nitocris, Iskandar, and Waver with Scotty on the back line. Now, for turn 1, you guys want to use Iskandar's 1st and 2nd skill. His tactics there, the 2nd skill will get upgraded at any party for 3 turns, so pretty nice in that regard. And then go ahead and use Nitocris' 2nd skill to charge her to full, and then NP with her. She is going to easily handle the wave, not need any sort of external help thanks to Iskandar. And again, you won't even have to worry about death procs. You don't even need to pop the 1st skill for her. Now in turn 2, you guys have already popped Iskandar's first 2 skills, so just go ahead and NP with him again. He will easily handle the demon, and he does even more damage to the demon than he does the dwellers. So again, he's going to, you know, not struggle like a lot of other people have with the demon in the past. Now on turn 3 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for Scotty on the back line. Go ahead and use Scotty's charge skill on Iskandar. Go ahead and use Scotty's defense down. Go ahead and use Iskandar's 3rd skill, and then go ahead and use the Waver's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd skills all on Iskandar as well, which should bring him up to full. Then use the Plugsuit attack buff and go ahead and NP, and he will 100% clear Nursery Rhyme, which again causes a lot of other people issues. So very straightforward, easy comp with no carding required. Right, next up now we have Ivan, and just like in the same vein as Iskandar, we're going to be using a Superscope Plugsuit comp. Again, just like Iskandar, he doesn't have a charge skill, so that's going to be his issue, but unlike Iskandar, Ivan doesn't have all the steroids to necessarily hit as hard, and that's going to cause a little bit of fluctuations in this comp. One is we're going to now be requiring an NP2 instead on top of the Superscope, and 2 is going to be the fact that Nitocris here at NP1 is now going to have a chance to leave the enemies alive. So again, this is going to be where your 1st skill on Nitocris is going to come into play. Hopefully you guys have leveled it to a decent level and have a chance to death proc it. And at minimum, just to be safe, you guys stagger your cards in wave 1 to make sure that it switches targets and kills the dwellers if they live. But again, otherwise should be a fairly straightforward comp. At NP2, Ivan should handle everything pretty easily with only Nursery Rhyme living with about 5k max remaining, so not too bad there in this regard. Another good part about this comp is it's staggered Waver and Scotty supports. You guys can use double Waver if you need, or double Scotty potentially even, but be careful with that. Again, it is calculated based off the numbers of having Waver in the comp at minimum so that you have the attack up in the other 2 waves, but Again, it should be manageable in some regards in that sense, but otherwise, as you guys can see, this does allow you to basically have one or the other, and so that's a good reason for these staggered support requirements. So for your party composition, you're going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Ivan, and Waver. You're going to want to have Scotty in the back line there. And then on turn 1, you guys can go ahead and pop Nito's first and second skills. You're probably going to need the death proc in this case, and Ivan doesn't have anything to help her out with, so make sure you guys go ahead and do that. And then NP, and again, like I said, be careful here. 2 of the dwellers might live at NP 1 of Nito, so try to stagger your cards just in case you don't get the death procs, and you guys should be good. Now for turn 2, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Ivan's second skill. That's his Buster Up. Make sure you guys go ahead and NP at this point, and you guys should easily handle the wave. The demon will again not cause Ivan any sort of trouble, and it'll be a very nice easy clear. In turn 3, go ahead and swap that Nitocris out with the Plugsuit for Scotty on the back line. Go ahead and use Scotty's defense down now. Go ahead and use her targeted charge on Ivan. And then go ahead and use all of the waiver skills on Ivan to charge him to full. From there, go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack up and go ahead and NP, and you guys should be good with Nursery Rhyme only living 18% of the time with a max of 5k. Should be easily cardable with any one card from anyone in this comp. Now we're going to be getting into some of the alter egos. So as you guys can see, we have Kingprotea as a Superscope comp here with the Plugsuit. So again, Superscope is going to be a high requirement for a lot of people, but the good news is here, while we do require an NP2 Kingprotea, the skill requirement is actually not that bad. The first skill, which a lot of people will have leveled anyways, is not really necessary to be leveled, and the second skill, we only need at rank 6 so that she gets the minimum of 15% charge per stack. So that should be very good and very approachable for a lot of people. The third skill will need to be at rank 10 because that's her attack up. Again, we will be requiring basically staggered supports here with Merlin and Waver, so that does mean if you have one, you can find the other on support, so it does give you guys some options. And we will be requiring an NP1 Nitocris, but again, as you guys can see, Nito is very doable even at NP1, where you just might want to stagger cards in case you don't death proc. But remember, if you want to automate that, leveling that skill to rank 10 would basically mean that you're never going to have a handleable values of health. So again, he'll live with that a good chunk of the time, only leave maybe 1 remaining at worst. So pretty good in that regard. Again here, just looking at this, Nursery Rhyme will live in the final wave 5% of the time, but again, that's enough that any chip shot card from anyone should be able to handle it. So this should be a very straightforward comp and pretty good and pretty doable, even considering the fact that this is a alter ego who only gets 1.5 times damage rather than 2. For the turn order here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Kingprotea, and Merlin. Again, you guys can get away with Waver or Scotty on the back line. That's up to you. As we get into the turn order here, though, on turn 1, you guys want to pop Kingprotea's first skill. It's going to start her generating her stacks. Then pop Nitocris's first and second skills. Again, the first skill should help her out with death procs. You guys can go ahead and NP here. But if you are dealing with only an NP1, she could leave up to 2 alive. So the higher you have that first skill on Nitocris, the better. But again, just make sure, just in case, that you stagger your cards in case both do remain alive. That way you have a chance of killing. Now, as we get to turn 2, make sure you guys pop Kingprotea's third skill. That's her 3 turns of attack up. And then from there, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Merlin's third skill on Kingprotea, who's already full charge, but it should give her now the Buster Up. Go ahead and NP, and you guys should be good. Again, she'll easily handle everything in the wave. She will struggle a little bit with the demon, but she will kill it 100% of the time, so you don't have to worry about it. Turn 3, you guys can go ahead and Plugsuit out your Nito for that remaining Waver or Scotty on your back line. Go ahead and use Merlin's first skill to charge her to 20%. Go ahead and use Kingprotea's second skill now to cash in those stacks, and that should get her 30% charge to get her to 50%. And then go ahead and use the remaining Waver and Scotty skills to charge her up to full, and or if it's Scotty, put the defense down on the enemy. From there, use the Plugsuit attack buff, and you guys should be good. Kingprotea now at full charge to go ahead and NP. And again, she'll easily handle Nursery Rhyme with her only living 5% of the time. So not too bad and really easily doable comp for those of you guys that have Kingprotea. Next up now, we've got the Okita variant of the alter ego comps. That is going to also be Superscope, which is going to be another high barrier to entry, and an NP1 Nito, which is going to cause you guys a little bit of an issue. But thanks to Okita having charge in her kit, we can get away with Merlin and Waver. That's going to be really strong and really good in the same vein as Kingprotea was. As a result, you guys can see the results are pretty much the exact same. We are going to be requiring an NP2 Okita at 10-10-10, so the skill requirement's going to be a little bit higher. But otherwise, again, it's going to be the same deal with the Dwellers in Wave 1 with Nitocris, and the same deal with Okita on Nursery Rhyme, where she kills her the majority of the time, but basically any amount of cards should handle it. Again, with regards to round 1, be careful because Nitocris has an opportunity to leave 2 enemies alive with the NP at NP1, so make sure that you guys stagger your cards just so that she kills, and that's where the first skill, being a death chance skill, is going to really come into play. The higher you have it leveled, the less you'll have to deal with carding the enemies here, so really good in that regard. If you have NP2, it should be perfectly fine and shored up in that regard as well. As we get into the party order here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Okita, and Merlin. From there, on turn 1, let's go ahead and pop Nito's first and second skill. That will charge her up to full, and again, the first skill will get her some death chance. Go ahead and NP with Nitocris at this point, and you guys should handle it as long as you stagger the cards and make sure that you don't have a chance of failure there. Turn 2, you guys are going to go ahead and pop Okita's first skill here. That is her Buster and Quick Up. And then go ahead and pop Merlin's third skill for the Buster Up on her. And then go ahead and NP with her. Again, she's already fully charged thanks to the Superscope, and she will handle everything in the second wave just fine, including the Demon as well. Now, in turn 3, make sure you guys go ahead and pop the remaining Okita skills, 2 and 3 there, and get her 30% charge. Go ahead and pop Merlin's first skill here to get her to 50%. Then go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for Waver and use Waver skills. You can actually do this first as well to get the buffs on Waver if you need for carding purposes, but you should be fine. And then go ahead and use all of Waver skills on Okita, and that should get her up to full at 100% charge. And then go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack buff and NP. You guys should be good again with Nursery Rhyme only living 35% of the time and at most 9.3k. So not too difficult to card out, should be really easily doable. Now, just to show this one off, we did want to show it. It is possible to do Okita with a Kscope, again, thanks to her charge. A little bit, Kingprotea is the same as well. The issue is now you've got to swap out the Merlin for a Scotty, and you basically are going to have to stagger the supports here and have an NP5 of that alter ego. So while it's certainly doable, the problem that you guys are going to have is going to be 24k HP remaining, so that's going to be pretty high barrier to entry. So stepping down from the Superscope means you have to step up a lot in terms of whalishness because of how it restricts the support options. Merlin is a lot better for making Buster units hit harder compared to, say, Scotty, so that is going to be definitely one of the issues with her in this comp. But again, as you guys can see, Nitocris should be good. Thanks to the fact that she does have a little bit more charge overflowing, Nitocris should be able to handle the first wave a lot easier with what we're going to do here. And again, you guys shouldn't have to worry at all about the first skill on Nitocris thanks to this, so that will at least make the comp somewhat easier in that regard. Now, the thing you guys are going to want to watch out for is obviously going to be Scotty's defense down in wave 3 and whether or not it lands, because if it fails, that is going to make this a 4-turn guaranteed. But otherwise, it should be doable for a lot of people. It should be an option. Well, I say a lot of people that have NP5. It should be an option for those of you guys that have a very highly invested Okita or Kingprotea. So again, as we get into the party order here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Okita, and Waver. From there, make sure you have Scotty on your back line. And then in turn 1 here, we're going to go ahead and pop Waver's second and third skills to sort of give Nitocris, again, the additional oomph as well as charge Okita to full. Go ahead and pop Nitocris' second skill and then fire off the NP, and she should easily handle the wave. Again, you won't need Nitocris' first skill at all, so that is a good thing about this one. Now in turn 2 here, go ahead and use Okita's first skill. That is going to be her Buster and Quick Up, and then go ahead and NP. Again, she'll handle everything in this wave fairly easily at NP5, nothing really to concern herself with, as again, the only issue is the fact that she didn't have Merlin before. And now, as we end up in turn 3, you guys are going to go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for the remaining other Waver or Scotty, and go ahead and use Okitan's second and third skills on herself to get her that extra charge and that extra oomph. From there, go ahead and use all the remaining Waver and Scotty's charge skills on Okitan, and you guys should be able to charge to full at that point. Should be relatively easily doable. And then if you are using Scotty, make sure you guys go ahead and use the defense down here as well. Just be careful that it doesn't miss. If it misses, you're going to be in for a hard time. And then go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and NP, and you guys should be good. Just be careful. Nursery Rhyme is going to have some health remaining. You'll never 100% kill her even with an NP5 unless you have a like super version that's grailed and gold foed. But otherwise, 24k HP, you guys are going to want to be selective with your cards and trying to make sure that you get the Okitan ones to help you out. And welcome to round 2 again, guys. Here is going to be our first 5 CE comp. This is going to be a Gilgamesh Superscope comp with Nitocris, so this one's going to be a little bit hairy in that regard, but it will only require NP1 and NP1 of the Nitocris as well. We're also going to be using staggered supports here between Waver and Merlin, allowing you to take the one that you don't have, so that's good in that regard. And then again, the only real concerns here with this, because Gil is just going to be really nicely effective in this node, is going to be Nitocris here on round 1, leaving one of the enemies, aka the driver here, with about 8k remaining at max. That is not going to be that big of a deal as long as you get the 2 cards to help with that, and the fact that you can't leave multiple alive is good, so you probably don't need the death skill in this case if you want to cut down on time. But you could pop it and it might actually just automate it and you never have to card, so that's up to you if you guys want to pop a skill every time, or if you guys want to take your risks with it and see if you can card it out sometime. Again, she will do that 0% of the time at NP1, so if you want to shore this up, use an MLB drop CE or use a higher NP level of Nitocris. Otherwise, again, this comp is fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot you guys got to do. You guys are basically going to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Gil, and Merlin with Waver on the back line. Now, on turn 1 here, you guys are going to go ahead and pop Gil's first skill, that's his Charisma, and then go ahead and pop Nito's second skill, and then the first skill as well if you want to, and charge it to full and NP here. Again, the driver is going to be your only concern. At NP1 with a normal drop C, it's going to die 0% of the time, so you'll have to card it, but it's not going to be so much that you guys can't manage it with cards. So it should be really doable in that regard. Now, as we get into turn 2 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Merlin's skill 3, his Buster Up on Gil. And then just go ahead and fire off Gil's NP because he's already at full charge, and he should easily handle the 2 enemies in this wave with nobody really causing him any sort of grief. As we get to turn 3 here, go ahead and use Merlin's first skill to get Gil to 20%. Go ahead and Plugsuit and bring in the remaining Waver for that Nitocris that you had, and that should basically allow you to now charge Gil to full, both with his third skill as well as all of Waver's skills on him. And go ahead and now and use the Plugsuit attack buff and fire off Gil's final NP, allowing him to again easily handle everyone here. The good news is John d'Arc in this wave will cause a lot of people a lot of grief, but not Gil, thanks to his servant bonus that he gets. So even though the fact that she's a ruler and takes resistant damage, you should still, even at NP1, be able to eke out about 55k against her, which should handle her. Next up, we've got the Kscope variant of the Gil comp, so we stepped down a little bit in whalishness in that regard, but now we require an NP2 Gil. You guys might be able to eke by with an NP1, but be very careful with that. You're going to definitely be card reliant at that point, and well, the good news is Gil can soak the stars to himself. The bad news is if you don't end up with Gil cards, it'll probably fail. However, because we stepped down to a normal Kscope, we now require staggered Waver and Scotty, which means that Gil is going to lose that Merlin buff, and that's a little bit why we had to step up here in terms of damage. However, as you guys can see, again, Nitocris should be relatively fine here with the driver dying even better than in the Superscope comp, and that's just because we're going to need to charge Gil some, so we actually have some options here. So for the party composition here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Gilgamesh, Waver, and then on your back line either another Waver or Scotty, up to you. Again, for turn 1 here, now you guys are just going to go ahead and pop Waver's second and third skills here to bring Gil up to full, and then go ahead and pop Gil's skill 1 here to get an additional charisma onto Nitocris. and then go ahead and use Nitocris's charge skill. And then at that point you can NP with her, and she should handle that first wave just fine. You can pop the first skill if you want, but you really shouldn't need to most of the time. And again, at most the driver's going to live with 3.2k, so it should be easily cardable. As we get into turn 2 here, Gil is fully charged and has double charisma, so just go ahead and fire off his NP, and he should be able to handle the limousine and driver here really easily, especially at NP2. As we end up in turn 3 now, go ahead and use Gil's third skill. That should get him to 30% charge. Go ahead and use Waver's first skill. That should get him to 60%. And then go ahead and Plugsuit out for the Scotty or Waver that you're missing. From there, go ahead and use their skills to charge Gil to full. And or use the, if you're using Scotty, her defense down here at this point as well. From there, use the Plugsuit attack buff, and then go ahead and NP with Gil, and he'll easily handle this wave with only Jeanne d'Arc living 65% of the time with 5.6k remaining HP. Now, that sounds like a pitiful amount, but because it's a ruler and she's taking half damage from everything, that will probably require about 2 cards from people, unless you get a nice lucky Gil card that's got a lot of crit stars on it. So you certainly can make that work, but just be careful. Remember, you are dealing with a ruler here, so everything is half. Welcome back to the Arjuna comps for round 2 here. So here you guys go. This is going to be our Superscope Arjuna comp requiring only NP1. That should make it a lot easier for you Arjuna Altar fans. Again, this is just going to be an NP1 Nitocris we're requiring as well. She will have a little bit of health left on the driver just because the amount of health it has in this node, it's higher than any of the other nodes' health values for the first wave, so that's a little bit of an issue, but otherwise should be really nice. Remember, Arjuna has 30% charge, so we can get away with Waver and Merlin now, and that's part of the reason we only need NP1 here. You guys are going to see the Kscope comp is going to probably struggle in that regard as well. You will have a little bit of an issue with Rama on the third wave, but not too much. Again, he'll die 57% of the time with at most 11.4k HP remaining. Not too bad, but could be, you know, a little bit of an issue if you ended up not getting Arjuna's cards, but still not too much. Again, even with all the buffs flying around, you guys should be easily capable of handling that. So I don't see too much of a concern here. Again, with round 1, you can probably pop Nitocris's first skill if you want to death proc the driver and not have to worry. So the higher the level you have on that, the better, but you probably don't need to at 7k. You could handle that with 2 cards. It's up to you if you want to do that to try and speed the comp up, but again, should be really nice and easy. As we get into the turn order here, you guys are going to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Arjuna, and Merlin, and make sure you guys have Waver on the back end. So in turn 1 here, and go ahead and popping Nitocris's second skill here, that should charge her up to full. Again, you don't need the first skill here unless you really want to try and speed the comp up or you have no other way of boosting, but otherwise just go ahead and NP and she'll easily handle the first wave with only the driver living, and you might have to card that one out, but it should be relatively straight. As we get into round 2 here, go ahead and pop Arjuna's first skill for his attack up, and then go ahead and pop Merlin's third skill here on Arjuna. That should get him the buster up that he needs to be able to handle the wave. Go ahead and NP at this point, and limousine and driver should get pretty decimated by Arjuna with. As we end up in turn 3, now you guys can go ahead and pop Merlin's first skill on Arjuna. You guys can go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for Waver, bring him in, and go ahead and use all of his skills on Arjuna. Then go ahead and pop Arjuna's second skill. That should be the Star Soak and the charge that he needs to soak everything to him and get himself up to full. So from there, go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack buff, and you guys should be good to NP and basically handle everything here other than Rama. Rama will live approximately 43% of the time, but otherwise, again. All right, now here comes the normal Kscope variant of the Arjuna comp for round 2. Again, you guys can see because we're using a regular Kscope, we had to step it up to NP2 compared to the Superscope comp, and that's largely due to the fact that we lost Merlin for the additional charge that we get out of Scotty. You guys can run another Waver in place of Scotty, that's up to you. I will say the advantage of using Scotty potentially with Arjuna is just the fact that you get another defense down, another debuff, something for Arjuna's first skill to proc off of. So in case his debuff were to fail to land, it wouldn't completely shaft him in damage then because you have another debuff on the target. That is up to you. I will leave that choice dependent on your prerogative, but still, either way, as you guys can see, it should be a fairly straightforward comp. Nitocris should handle the driver pretty easily there in the first wave. You probably shouldn't need death proc for something like that. And then again here on Rama in the third wave, this is going to be our big issue with him living 85% of the time and up to almost 21k HP there. So pretty nasty in that regard at NP2, but as long as you get a single Arjuna card, that should be handleable. And do remember Arjuna has the Star Soak on his Buster cards for that second skill there, so you guys should be good, and as well as the fact that you guys will be rotating people in and out of the party there in turn 3, so you guys should get some stars from that. But again, I think this should be a fairly straightforward comp, nothing too shabby about it. So we're going to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Arjuna, and Waver there in the first round. You guys are going to want to go ahead and use Waver's second and third skill on the party in general to get Arjuna to full. That'll get Nitocris a little bit more extra oomph. From there, go ahead and charge Nitocris with her second skill, and again, you can use the first skill if you want for the death procs, but that's up to you. But go ahead and fire off the NP here, and you guys should handle everything in the node just fine, with only the driver having any sort of issue for you. As we end up in turn 2, go ahead and pop Arjuna's first skill here. That's going to get him the attack up that he needs, as well as the additional damage to debuff targets. And then from there, just go ahead and NP. He already has the Waver attack buff and he's charged to full. He should be able to handle the node at NP2 here pretty easily on the second wave. Again, only the limousine will he deal a little bit less damage to, and it shouldn't be an issue. As we get into turn 3 here now, you guys are going to want to go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for your remaining Scotty or Waver. Bring them in. From there, pop Arjuna's second skill that'll allow him to charge and soak the stars, get him to 30%. From there, go ahead and use the remaining Waver skill on Arjuna. That'll get him to 60%. And you can either use the remaining second Waver skills here, or you can use Scotty's charge skill on Arjuna. Bring him up to full charge. If you're using Scotty, use your defense down here. And then use the Plugsuit attack buff. From there, you guys should be good to go ahead and NP. Just remember, Rama will cause you a little bit of an issue, so try to select your cards carefully here in this one, particularly with Arjuna cards. All right, welcome back to the Arjuna Chen Gong hybrid comp, aka Gong Juna. This one is going to be, again, pretty nice. Remember, you guys can actually use this as a 4CE variant by instead replacing Arjuna here, aka Alter Arjuna, with a NP5 Spartacus and a damage CE with his maxed out charge and buster up skills. But otherwise, again, it should actually be really nice and provide you guys a little bit of flexibility. The hardest part about this comp, like we explained in round 1, is going to be your supports. Again, we do require a Kscope on Chen Gong, but otherwise here we have Helena, we have Waver, we have Altera, and we have Shakespeare. You can actually replace the Altera for Lan Ling. That will be an option for you guys. Again, the reason that they're there is to give Chen Gong sort of the damage boost that they need in turn 2 here. And that's going to be a little bit of an issue, as the limousine will have about 7.7k HP remaining at max. So you got to be very careful in that regard, that you don't try to like skimp on the supports and their skills and end up costing Chen Gong his ability to kill. Otherwise, Chen Gong will be very nice in this comp, because his third skill is actually going to buff Arjuna Alter here, or Spartacus if you're doing the 4CE variant. And at NP1 there, Arjuna Alter is pretty easily capable of handling the third wave, with only Rama causing him some issues here. But as you guys can see, at 10k remaining, that should be easily cardable for everyone. The only concern here outside of trying to switch the supports up is going to be party cost. So if you guys try to go like more overkill with the supports, it won't work in that regard, so be very careful. Helena is sort of a requirement, Waver is sort of a requirement, and Shakespeare is sort of a requirement. So really only Altera can be swapped with Lan Ling, but it's up to you. And again, there might be another way to figure this comp that we didn't figure out. But otherwise, I think it's a very malleable comp, given the fact that it is a little bit of a hybrid and should work for a lot of you guys. Now, the other thing you guys want to make sure here with regards to this comp is that you have your party set up correctly, with a front line of Chen Gong, Helena, and Arjuna. Remember, you want Arjuna in the far right slot so that he's the last person to die always, and you want Helena in that second slot because Chen Gong kills the leftmost person in the party that isn't him. From there, your backline, you're going to want Waver, you're going to want Shakespeare, and you're going to want Altera the Santa, or your Lan Ling, depending on who you're using. We will use Altera as the example here. So as we get into turn 1 here, your turn order is going to be using Helena's first and third skills here to get Chen Gong some more charge and some card type up. From there, go ahead and NP, and Chen Gong should refund to exactly 20%, which is the bare minimum that he needs. So be very careful in that regard. You could get away with 19%, but 18% will not work. At that point, he should easily handle the first wave and you should be good. In turn 2, go ahead and pop Arjuna's first and second skills. That's going to get him a little bit of charge as well as his attack up to help out Chen Gong if he needs. And then that death of Helena should have brought in waiver, so now go ahead and use the waivers skills all on Chen Gong. That should get Chen Gong back to 70% charge. Go ahead and Plugsuit that waiver out with the Altera the Santa on the back end, and that should allow you to then use Altera the Santa's first and second skills on Chen Gong to get him up to 90% as well as give him some MP damage. From there, use Chen Gong's second skill. That is his party-wide 10% charge. That will get Chen Gong to full as well as give Arjuna Alter a little bit more. Go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and go ahead and NP here. From there, just watch out for the limousine. It'll live 60% of the time with a max remaining health of 7.7k, so just make sure you have enough cards to handle that. As we get into turn 3 here now, the death of Santera should have brought in Shakespeare, so go ahead and use Shakespeare's party-wide buster up, and go ahead and use his charge skill on Arjuna. That should bring Arjuna now to full, as he was sitting at 80% before that, and then go ahead and NP. Alright, now much in the same vein as the Drake comp in round 1, we have a Superscope Anni Blond comp for Ishtar here in round 2. And again, that's likely due to the fact that she is a 50% charger, so you can actually get away with not having a second support. It makes it a very quick and easy comp. Superscope is going to be your hardest barrier to entry, but we do only require an NP1 Ishtar, so it's very nice and straightforward. I think for the Drake comps it was NP2, so this is even easier option for a lot of people. And this will be a 5 CE comp, so really nice in that regard. Again, we will require you to find a waiver somehow, but that can be easily done on support, or you could find a Nitocris if you didn't have her for this, so it would give you some options. But otherwise, the Superscope Ishtar is going to have to be your own, so do be careful with that. That is going to be the highest barrier to entry. In round 1 here, the driver's only going to live with 8k remaining. That should be cardable by a lot of you guys. And then John is going to have 7k remaining in round 3. That is going to be a bit of an issue. So remember, John is a ruler. She takes half damage, so be very careful of this scenario. You want to prioritize Ishtar cards if you can, because she should be super buffed on that round and really be capable of hitting her hard. But otherwise, if you don't have any, you might be able to eke it out. Just be very careful to make sure that you do everything that you can. Remember, you will have a star bomb from the Anni Blonde's second skill, so use that if you think you're gonna need it because of low rolls. It's good to preemptively pop it, especially if you see you have no good cards to use in case John lives. But otherwise, should be really doable. Just be careful about how beefy that John is gonna be on the final round. For your party setup here, remember your front line is just going to be Nitocris, Ishtar, and Waiver. Again, you're going to go ahead and use Ishtar's first skill on this first turn, and then go ahead and use Nitocris's second skill. If you want to use the first skill, you can, but she is charged to full here, so go ahead and NP. And then if you need the death proc from the first skill, it should help you out. But otherwise, again, the driver should only live with about 8k remaining, so not too bad. As we get to turn 2 here, you guys want to make sure you pop Ishtar's third skill. Don't forget it. It has to be popped on this turn because it's a delayed attack buff. And then go ahead and fire off Ishtar's NP here. You should easily handle the limousine and the driver in this way and have no issue. As we get into turn 3, go ahead and pop Ishtar's second skill for the 50% charge. Go ahead and use all the waiver skills now on Ishtar. That should bring her up to 100%. Go ahead and use the Anni Blonde buster up. And then you guys should be able to NP with Ishtar and you should be good. Again, if you notice that you have bad cards, make sure you pop the Anni Blonde's Star Bomb skill, as that will definitely help you out as well. All right, now here comes the normal Kscope variant of Ishtar, and I think you guys are going to actually find this one to be quite affordable. It is normal Kscope. It is still only NP1 Ishtar, and that's a good thing because she has 50% charge, so we get away with having Merlin and Waiver here, so it's a really good combo. Again, you guys are going to want to watch out in the first wave here, as we do require an NP1 Nitocris. You shouldn't have too big of an issue here with regards to the driver. Again, at most it's going to have 5k, so not too bad. But the real issue and concern is going to come here in round 3 with Jeanne d'Arc Ruler having 10k remaining. Remember, as a ruler, she takes half damage, so that's going to be something you guys are really going to watch out for. Your carding is not going to be nearly as effective here, and she will always live for just using a normal Kscope and NP1 Ishtar. Be very careful about this. You could try using a Scotty in place of the waiver in case you guys didn't have one, but you managed to have your own Merlin. Just do remember that then you're going to be using the defense down, which could get resisted, so it's up to you. It shouldn't happen too often. Don't let that one concern you if it's your only option, but it might occasionally result in a 4-turn. But again, it should be a relatively quick and easy to resolve 4-turn, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like I said, the big issue is going to be that Jeanne d'Arc health remaining. There's not going to be a whole lot you guys can do. Just prioritize those Ishtar cards if you get them, and otherwise you should be good, because you should get a little bit of stars from the Plugsuit to help you out. For the party setup here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Ishtar, and Merlin with waiver on the 4th slot there. Now, turn 1, you guys want to use Ishtar's first skill, that's her charisma, and you want to use Merlin's first skill, that's his party-wide charge in charisma. So it should be really nice, should give Nitocris what she needs to be able to handle the first wave. Go ahead and pop Nitocris her second skill to charge her to full and just NP. You're not going to need her first skill at all unless you want to try and speed it up somehow and never have to deal with the cards. But otherwise, again, should easily handle wave 1. In turn 2, make sure you do not forget to pop Ishtar's third skill. This is, again, a delayed attack skill, so if you fail, you're not going to have it for turn 3. Pop that there. Go ahead and pop Merlin's third skill on Ishtar as well. That's his buster up. And then go ahead and NP. Special consideration here as well, if you really wanted to and you were worried about stars, you could actually end up popping Merlin's invuln here. It will increase the star gen, but you're probably not going to get too much out of that. Again, she'll easily handle the limousine and driver in that wave, so nothing too concerning. As we get into turn 3 here now, go ahead and pop Ishtar's second skill to charge her to full. Go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for waiver, bring him in, and go ahead and use all of his skills now on Ishtar. That should charge her up to full. Go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and use Ishtar's NP now. Again, your big concern here is going to be Jeanne d'Arc. She is a ruler, she takes half damage, so she will die cleanly none of the time, and you will always have to card her at NP1. However, if you guys do get the right card, you should be handleable, but at 10k remaining, remember she takes half damage. That is going to be rough for you guys to card out. Next up here is our Tesla variant of the round 2 comps. It's going to be with a Superscope. And you guys are going to notice something a little strange here. We always assume Tesla's NP damage buff fails. So that's a little bit why we require NP2, because at NP2, he has this chance remaining. 15k is still not that doable on Jeanne d'Arc, but remember, this is with a failure. So because we're dealing with a ruler who takes half damage, yeah, you might end up with a 4-turn, but it should succeed if it procs, and it will proc like 85% of the time for you guys at max rank, so really good there in that regard. We are going to be requiring an NP1 Nitocris to handle the front wave, and we are going to be staggering Merlin and waiver to help Tesla out some, but otherwise, again, Tesla should be really good. He's actually going to handle the final wave pretty effortlessly, other than against Jeanne, who he seems to just really lack the damage against. But for everything else in this node, it should be pretty easily doable. Again, Tesla being a 50% charger certainly helps him out, and that's why we're able to get away with Merlin. If not, he probably wouldn't be capable of doing this node. But as we go to show you guys here, the turn order, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Tesla, Merlin, and then on the 4th slot, their waiver. On turn 1 here, go ahead and use Merlin's first skill. That's going to get Tesla a little bit of attack up, as well as Nitocris, the amount that she's going to need for the first round here. And then go ahead and use Nitocris' second skill. You can pop the first skill if you need it for the death chance, but you probably shouldn't. And again, go ahead and NP with Nito, as she'll easily handle everything in the first wave there, with the driver living all the time, but at most having 8k, so should be easily cardable in most of your circumstances. As we end up in turn 2 here, go ahead and use Merlin's third skill now on Tesla, and go ahead and use Tesla's second skill as well for his NP damage up, hopefully, and then go ahead and NP. He should again be easily capable, even with a failure at NP2, of handling second wave, so pretty nice in that regard. Now in turn 3, you guys are going to want to go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for the waiver on the back end. As he comes in, go ahead and use all of his skills on Tesla, and then go ahead and use Tesla's third skill to charge him up to full. That should allow you guys to now go ahead and Plugsuit the attack buff, and then go ahead and NP. Just remember, the damage calcs are done with a failure in mind, so yeah, at 15k, that's not going to be very doable for you guys to card unless you just get some nice brave chains and stuff, or you get some crits. But otherwise, Jeanne d'Arc with that maximum 15k shouldn't be a concern if you succeed with the NP damage buff on Tesla's second skill. So keep that in mind. This should be a doable comp for those of you guys that have Tesla at an NP2, but otherwise this is still going to be a little bit shaky. All right, welcome to round 3, guys. Here is our Gilgamesh Superscope variant for round 3. Again, the Superscope requirement is going to be a little hefty, but we're only going to need NP1 Gil, which should be not too bad. We're going to be using an NP1 Nitocris to handle wave 1. Again, as you guys have seen across a lot of these comps, she is just a super viable clearer of the first wave, regardless of what NP level you have her at. And then on our supports here, we're going to be doing Waver and Merlin staggered supports, which does allow you to take whichever support you don't have. So pretty nice in that regard. It is going to be using Plugsuit, but otherwise not too hefty on the requirements outside of the Superscope requirement there. Again, as you guys can see, only the Shaking Ghost will have any chance of living in this round out of anything. But even at an NP1 with a normal non-MLB drop CE, you guys could easily try to improve that if you want by having an additional MP level or MLBing the drop CE. And it should cut down on the amount of times that it lives. If you want to, you guys can invest in Nitocris's first skill, but that's up to you. Again, that will increase our odds of death proccing. It might speed up the comp if you never have to card, but that's again on you if you want to do that. For the party composition, you guys are going to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Gilgamesh, Merlin, and Waver. Again, that should be pretty good, pretty solid in that regard. So go ahead on turn 1 now and use Gil's first skill, that is his charisma. Go ahead and use Nitocris's second skill here, and that should charge her to full. At that point, you guys can NP and you guys should be good, but it's up to you if you want to pop Nitocris's first skill to try and help out with the death proc. As we get into turn 2, you guys are going to go ahead and use Merlin's third skill on Gil. That's going to be his targeted buster up and crit damage buff, and it should be really nice to go ahead and just NP now with Gil, as he will easily handle everything in the third wave with Glasses God dying easily. As we end up in turn 3, go ahead and Plugsuit that Nitocris out to bring Waver in. From here, go ahead and use all of the Waver skills on Gilgamesh. That should bring him to 50% charge. Go ahead and pop Merlin's first skill now to bring him to 70%, and pop Gil's third skill to charge him up to full, and soak any stars that are remaining. At this point, go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and NP with Gil, and again, you should have an easy time with this wave. There's no more ruler in this like there was in round 2, so again, should be really, really solid, and Gil will easily slaughter everyone in this wave. Welcome to the normal Kscope variant. This is going to be Gil's sort of easy time with this node, so even with a normal Kscope, we still only require an NP1 of Gil, so not too bad there. We're going to require, again, Nitocris here at NP1. Again, that's just because she's so effective at clearing the first wave. And we are going to be requiring staggered Waver and Scotty supports. You guys could get the job done with double Waver if you have your own. That's up to you. Scotty at least will provide you guys the ability to take whichever support you're missing. So you guys can do, if you have Scotty, you guys can bring a Waver. If you guys have Waver, you can bring a Scotty, or vice versa. It's just up to you and what you guys can find on support, but we made the comp malleable in that sense. And then again, we're going to be using Plugsuit here to rotate them, and everything else should be fine. Your only concerns are going to be Shaking Ghost in Wave 1, which really won't be a concern at all, and Siegfried in Wave 3, which really won't be a concern at all either. Both will be easily handleable with one singular card if they do manage to live. For our party setup here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Gilgamesh, and Waver with Scotty there in the 4th slot. From there, go ahead on turn 1 and use Waver's second and third skills to charge Gil to full. Go ahead and use Gil's first skill now, and then go ahead and use Nitocris's second skill to charge her to full. From there, NP with Nitocris, and you guys should easily handle the first wave. You don't really need to pop Nitocris's first skill at all. It should be fine. You might just have to card one thing, but again, should handle it with any one card. Now in turn 2, you guys have charged Gil to full already and popped a lot of the attack buffs, so just go ahead and NP with Gil, and you guys should be good. He'll easily handle Glasses God here, which is going to be the one that causes anyone any issues, so pretty nice in that regard. In turn 3 now, go ahead and pop Gil's third skill to charge him to 30%. Go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for the Scotty in the backline, or Waver if you're using them. Go ahead and use the remaining Waver skill on Gilgamesh to bring him up to 60%. And then go ahead and use the Scotty charge skill, or if you're using another Waver, all of his charge skills on Gil to bring him up to full. If you're using Scotty, use the defense down now on the enemies, and go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack up. And you guys should be good to go ahead and NP with Gil, and he'll easily handle everything here, with only Siegfried living 5% of the time with 1.6k. Easily handleable by one card. All right, now here is our Superscope Arjuna Altar variant for round 3. Again, this is gonna have at least a low barrier to entry on NP requirements for both Nitocris and Godjuna, but the Superscope is gonna be the issue that is gonna cause a lot of people not to be able to do this comp. We are gonna be using staggered supports of Merlin and Waver, so again, you guys can take whichever one of those two you don't have on support, so it should give you guys some options. This is gonna be a 5 CE comp that should easily handle this node. As you guys can see, Shaking Ghost in the first round will cause Nitocris a little bit of an issue there, but otherwise not too shabby. And as we end up in round 3, Siegfried will live some of the time, probably saying Sumanai in the process for making you have to card him, but it should be easily handleable at 8.4k remaining health to card him out. So otherwise not too bad here. I think this is a very straightforward comp. I think it's very low barrier to entry aside from the Superscope. But with the Superscope, pretty nasty in that regard. As we get to the party composition here, you guys are going to want to start out with the front line of Nitocris, Godjuna, and Merlin with Waver on the back end. And again, you could use a Scotty in place of the Waver if you want. Just remember that means you're going to be dealing with a defense down that could fail. So for turn 1 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and use Nitocris's charge skill, and at that point you guys can just NP if you want. There's nothing too bad you have to do here. Shaking Ghost should die none of the time, but should be cardable, you know, at most at 4.8k pretty easily. So if you guys want, you guys can pop Nitocris's first skill, but that's up to you. As we end up in wave 2 now, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Godjuna's first skill, and go ahead and pop that Merlin third skill on Godjuna. He's already charged to full here, so go ahead and NP. Pretty easy to handle this wave here with Glasses God not causing him any issue. Now in turn 3, go ahead and Plugsuit out that Nitocris for the Waver on the back line. Go ahead and use all the Waver skills on Godjuna here. Go ahead and pop Godjuna's second skill. That should bring him up to 80% charge, and then pop that missing Merlin skill for the first skill there to bring Godjuna to full. From there, use the Plugsuit attack buff, and you guys should be good to go ahead and NP. Again, Sumanai will live with basically 8.4k remaining at most, and he'll die 71% of the time, so not too bad there. If you are concerned about that, remember you will have rotated bringing stars into the comp, and Godjuna can soak them to his buster card, so pretty easy. All right, here comes the normal Kscope variant of Arjuna Altar. As you guys can see, we are now going to have to step up because of that to an NP2, and now all of a sudden Sumanai is going to cause us a little bit of grief here with 18.8k remaining, so that is going to be a big concern with this comp. We're going to require an NP1 Nitocris to handle the first wave, and we are going to require staggered supports here of Waver and Scotty. Again, this does mean that you guys can take whichever one of those two supports you don't have, so pretty malleable in that sense. And the good news about using Scotty with Godjuna is you get another debuff to basically allow him to proc extra damage off of potentially if one of his debuffs were to fail. So you guys do have that as an option here, and otherwise I don't find this one to be too bad. It's just going to be that NP2 Godjuna that is going to cause most of you guys some grief if you didn't roll heavy for him. So I wouldn't recommend trying to stretch this at NP1. It's just not going to work, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're losing out on the attack power of a Superscope, and you're also losing out on Merlin and his buster buff, so that is one of the issues that you guys are going to have. But again, the good news about using Merlin is you can actually get away with using Merlin's second skill to cause a debuff on the enemies. So as we get into the party order here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Arjuna, and Waver with Scotty in the back line. Remember, you can use another Waver if you want. It's up to you. Still, should be really doable here. So as we end up in turn 1, go ahead and use Waver's second and third skills here to bring Arjuna to full charge, as well as give Nitocris a little bit extra oomph. Go ahead at that point, use Nitocris's second skill to charge her to full, and you should be good to go ahead and NP. You don't really have to use Nitocris's first skill for the death proc, because the Shaking Ghost, even though it will never die clean outside of a death proc, should only have 4.1 k HP remaining, so you guys should be good to card it out. So now in turn 2 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and pop Arjuna's first skill here. You've already charged him to full, so there's not too much you got to do in that regard, but just go ahead and NP, and he should easily be able to handle Glasses God, and everything should be fine at NP2. As we end up in turn 3, go ahead and pop Arjuna's second skill. That should allow him to get 30% charge here. Go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for the Scotty or Waver on the back end. And then go ahead and use the remaining Waver skill on Arjuna. That should get him back to 60%. And then go ahead and use the remaining Scotty or Waver's charge skills on Arjuna here to bring him up to full. From there, if you're using Scotty, use the defense down. That should help you out in terms of damage. And then go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff. From there, you guys should be good to NP with Arjuna. Just watch out for Sumanai, aka Siegfried, as he is going to basically live 69% of the time and basically have about 19k remaining HP. So make sure you try to prioritize Arjuna cards here, but remember you did get some stars from rotating, and Arjuna will soak them to his buster cards. So pretty good in that regard. You guys should be fine unless you get shafted in terms of cards. All right, welcome back to the Gong Juna hybrid here. As you guys can see, we're going to be using a Chen Gong and Arjuna altar at NP1 there. Kscope Plugsuit hybrid comp here to handle this wave, and this is, again, like I said, going to be really nice. This is to me the true use of Chen Gong rather than necessarily looping himself too much, because Chen Gong is definitely going to help the party rotate as well as buff Arjuna altar to handle that third wave, so really good in that regard. Again, the Kscope shouldn't be too hard of a barrier to entry here on Chen Gong, and we will only be using a drop CR on Arjuna altar. We calculated it with non-MLB, but you guys can by this point probably have an MLB to put on him, so you guys can stretch that out in wave 3 even a little bit more in terms of damage, and you guys can also level up the drop C if you really need to, but you don't have to. As we look at the support requirements here, this is going to be the real barrier to entry here, as we have Helena, Waver, Altera Archer, and Shakespeare. You guys can actually substitute the Altera Archer for a Lan Ling if you have him, but again, the hardest part is going to be finding anyone other than Waver on support, so pretty much doomed to have the rest of these people. Again, the good part about this here is going to be the fact that it's relatively low budget and should be units that a lot of people will end up having, especially stuff like Shakespeare there. The big problem is going to be stuff like a welfare that has kind of now not been around in a while, and as well as party cost is going to be an issue as well. So if you think you guys can try to stretch this by going higher and more overkill with the supports, it actually won't work out too well for you, especially because we're trying to run max drop CEs. The good part about this comp too, though, is this is a 5 CE comp, remember, but we can actually adapt it to be 4. And the way you do that is by dropping out Arjuna altar and instead taking a Spartacus at NP5 with at least 10/10 skills and using a damage CE in place of the drop CE there. So that would definitely make that more viable, more doable, and should at least give people some sort of option. So as we get into the party composition here, remember, Chen Gong kills the leftmost person in the party that's not him, so you want to structure this very carefully. You're going to want to put Chen Gong in the first slot, go ahead and put Helena in the second slot, go ahead and put Arjuna altar in the rightmost slot so that he doesn't die. And then on your back line now, go ahead and put in Waver in the first slot, go ahead and put in Shakespeare in the next slot, and then go ahead and put Altera the Santa on the last slot. So for the turn order here and how you guys are going to handle this, on turn 1, make sure you guys use Helena's first and third skills. on Chen Gong here to bring him up to full charge, as well as give him a little bit of extra card type up. From there, go ahead and NP. Chen Gong should easily handle the first wave and refund to exactly 20%, so should be exact amounts that you need. If you get less than 19%, you've scuffed, so make sure you don't skimp in some way in that regard. And then Helena will die, rotating in waiver. As we end up in turn 2 here, go ahead and use Arjuna's first and second skills for himself. It should get him 30% charge, as well as a little bit of damage up to help out Chen Gong with the second wave here. And then go ahead and use that waiver skills all on Chen Gong. So that should get Chen Gong 50% more charge and bring him up to 70%. From there, go ahead and Plugsuit the waiver out for the Altera the Sunta, Altera Archer there in the last slot. And that should allow her to come in and then use her first and second skills on Chen Gong. That should charge him back to 90% now, as well as giving him some MP damage up. Then use Chen Gong's party-wide charge on his second skill there to give everybody 10%. That should bring him to full, so go ahead and NP. And you're only gonna have to watch out for Glasses God, who will die cleanly none of the time, but should only have at most 13k remaining, so any one Arjuna altar card will probably resolve it, and at worst you might have to end up using one of those support cards. Now as we end up in turn 3 here, Shakespeare should have come in from that last yeeting by Chen Gong, so go ahead and use his party-wide buster up and then use his targeted charge skill on Arjuna. Go ahead and use Chen Gong's third skill on Arjuna as well, and then make sure that you guys NP with Arjuna. Should be good at that point. And oh, also make sure you use the Plugsuit attack buff here. Don't forget that one either. So both of those are going to be super important not to forget. But Sumanai will live only 25% of the time if you do that, and should only have 7.3k HP remaining. All right, guys, here is our Superscope Ishtar comp for round 3. Again, just like you guys saw with round 2, this is going to be an easy comp. Basically, nobody has a chance at living through her. The problem is going to be the Superscope. That is going to be a huge barrier to entry, but otherwise here you guys can see we only require an NP1 Ishtar, so really not too bad in that regard. Again, we are going to be requiring an NP1 of Nitocris, so that is going to be a little bit of an issue for people that don't have her, but we're only requiring waiver on support because this is an Anni Blond comp. So we don't need the second support because of the fact that Ishtar is a 50% charger. And that makes this very doable, very quick and clean, and very viable for a lot of people that manage to have a Superscope. So again, maybe perchance you guys could actually find a Nitocris on support if you do already have waiver and you're missing her. Again, it's just going to depend. There's going to be a lot of support casters up, so you might have a hard time finding that. Otherwise, only the Shaking Ghost there in round 1 is going to cause us any sort of issue, and it really won't. It'll die none of the time unless you death proc it, but it will only have 5.4k remaining HP, which should be easily handleable with cards. So as we get to the party structure here, you guys are going to have Nitocris, Ishtar, and Waiver there in your front line, obviously, since we're not using Plugsuit. And then you guys for the turn order are going to want to go ahead and on turn 1 here, you guys are going to want to pop Ishtar's first skill and then pop Nitocris's second skill. That's going to get the charisma onto Nito, and it's going to charge her to full. At that point, you guys can go ahead and NP if you want. You can pop Nitocris's first skill for the death chance, but you shouldn't have to. Again, the Shaken Ghost should only have about 5.4k remaining, so not too bad. As we end up in round 2 now, you guys are going to want to make sure you don't forget to pop Ishtar's third skill. Remember, this is a delayed attack buff, so you won't have it for round 3 if you don't do it here. At that point, Ishtar is already at full, so go ahead and NP, and you guys should easily handle this wave as well, with the Glasses God causing no. In turn 3 now, go ahead and pop Ishtar's second skill. That's her charge skill. Go ahead and use all the waiver skills now on Ishtar, and that should charge her to full. And use the Anniversary Blonde Buster up on Ishtar, and then go ahead and NP. You guys should be good. She'll 100% kill all the enemies, so you never have to worry about trying to crit or anything like that, and it should be a very painless comp. Here is the normal Kscope variant of Ishtar for round 3. Again, this one should be relatively easy here. I think you guys are going to see we still only require NP1, so it should be very approachable for a lot of people. Just a normal Kscope as well, leveled to 20. And then an NP1 Nitocris could cause some concern, but we do use staggered supports of Merlin and Waver. So you guys could have any two of these three and try to find the third on support. That is the good option about having staggered supports, is it makes it very malleable, very choosable for what you need. Again, no one here will live ever other than the Shaking Ghost in round 1 with Nitocris, but for that reason, because it's so low here, even 25% of the time she'll clear it, so you don't have to worry too much about the first skill and having it leveled, or even using it for that matter in the middle of your runs. So pretty good in that regard. For your turn order here, for your party structure, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Ishtar, Merlin, and then Waver in the 4th slot. From there, go ahead on turn 1 now and use Ishtar's first skill, the Charisma. Go ahead and use Merlin's first skill, the Attack Up, and charge. That should bring Ishtar to full, and it should give Nitocris a little bit of extra oomph to clear some of the time. So go ahead and use Nitocris's second skill now, charge her to full, and NP. She again should handle everything in this wave pretty easily, with only Shaking Ghost living 75% of the time, but at worst it's going to be handled by 1 card. Now as we end up in turn 2, go ahead and make sure to remember to pop Ishtar's third skill. Remember, this is a delayed attack buff. If you don't do it now, you won't have it for turn 3, so be sure you don't forget to use it here. From there, use Merlin's third skill on Ishtar, that's the Buster Up, and then go ahead and NP, and she should easily handle, even at NP1, everything in the second wave, including Glasses God. As we end up now in turn 3, I want you guys to go ahead and Plugsuit out the Nitocris for your Waver. At that point, as he comes in, go ahead and use all of his skills on Ishtar. Go ahead and use Ishtar's second skill, her charge skill, to charge her up to full, and use the Plugsuit attack up at this point. And you guys should be good to go ahead and fire off that NP. She should easily handle everything in this wave. Only Sumanai would even come close, and again, he will die 100% of the time, so you never have to worry about carding. All right, now we have Tesla. This is going to be our Kscope variant here. As you guys can see, it is going to be using Merlin and Waver staggered support, so it is going to be good in that regard. But otherwise, you guys are going to see that, again, we don't ever need a Superscope. We actually had a Superscope comp planned for this, but it was literally the exact same thing, and still we assume, as always in Tesla comps, that we fail the NP damage proc. So as you guys can see, with a normal Kscope comp, if you just had a Superscope, it'd be even better. So again, normal Kscope comp doesn't even fail to kill ever, so you guys are pretty good here. The only concern is going to be the Shaking Ghost there in turn 1, since we're using an NP1 Nitocris. You guys can shore that up by using an MLB drop CE and or higher level of Nitocris. You guys can also level your drop CEs in this event, as they do scale all attacks, so it's not that bad of a deal for you. But again, the cool part about this one is going to also be the fact that you guys can have the staggered support, so you guys can take whichever one of these 3 that you're missing, either Merlin, Waver, or Nitocris, if you can find them on support. So not too bad in that regard. You guys could also manage to get away with using a Scotty in place of the Waver if you wanted, but that one's up to you. For our party setup here, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of Nitocris, Tesla, and Merlin, with Waver and or Scotty on the back end. And then for turn 1, you guys are going to want to go ahead and make sure that you guys use Merlin's first skill now. That's the 20% charge. That'll bring Tesla to full and give Nitocris a little bit of extra firepower. Go ahead and use Nitocris' second skill at this point. That'll charge her to full and NP. And again, you don't have to worry about the first skill on Nitocris unless you want to for the death proc chance. But otherwise, you should be easily able to card out the Shaking Ghost as it lives. Now, in turn 2, you guys are going to want to go ahead and use Merlin's third skill on Tesla to give him the Buster Up. Then make sure you guys use Tesla's second skill at this point. That's his NP damage buff. Again, if it clears, it's okay. You actually could probably get away with not using it in this regard, because we calculated it never to fail even with a failed proc. So you guys are fine in that regard. It's up to you if you want to use it. From there, go ahead and NP with Tesla and you guys should be good. As we end up in turn 3 now, make sure you guys Plugsuit out the Nitocris for that Waver or Scotty on the back end. Use all of their charge skills to bring Tesla to 50%. If you're using Scotty, use defense down now. and then go ahead and use Tesla's third skill to charge him back up to full. At that point, go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff, and that should get Tesla everything he needs to go ahead and NP, and even if you failed the proc, you're still 100% good, as he will clear everyone. No cards required. Alright, so now we actually have a little bit of an addendum to the quick video, just to explain here. This is a comp that we forgot, so I'm just going to take full responsibility for this and say this was my fault. I'm not going to blame Bob or anyone else who tried to figure this out and come up with all the comps. Sometimes we miss one. And so that's sort of what happened here. Marie is a very easy one. Again, the insane part about her is that she doesn't require any skills of hers to be leveled. Her NP refund is actually just naturally good, and she works as a quick looper. The issue at play is she kind of struggles with higher health enemies, but again, that's partially because she doesn't have any really sort of steroid. So the good news is here is we only require an NP1. The bad news is this is a Superscope comp. We will have another variant right after this to help you guys out, but we're going to be using Fragments of 2004 and Double Scotty. So that should make this a very quick and easy comp for a lot of people. One of the other concerns though is going to be the refund coming off the back of wave 1 here. So you guys might want to pre-card one of these enemies. I'm going to recommend it probably on the 18k, but if you're really sure of it and you know you're not going to crit, the 14k can be fine. Just make sure you don't use something that actually will kill the enemy, because if you kill it, then by pre-carding you're gonna just be down one enemy to refund against, so not ideal. But by pre-carding it, you can lower its health and maybe get more of Marie's hits to be overkill and shore up a little bit on this 49%, because that is the exact bare minimum you guys can get. So if you ever get 48%, oof. So just be careful in that regard. For the party setup, you guys are going to have Scotty and Marie, and then the other Scotty right there. For the turn order on turn 1, just go ahead and pop both the Scotty quick ups in turn 1 on Marie, and go ahead and NP, and you guys should be good. We end up in turn 2. You guys can go ahead and charge Marie to full with one of the Scotty charge skills, and then go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's NP gen buff. That's going to be her big issue here, is refunding against slightly higher values. So at that point, go ahead and NP, and she should be solid again. Handle everything in the wave very easily and refund back to 66%. As we end up in turn 3 now, go ahead and charge Marie to full with the last remaining Scotty charge skill. Go ahead and use both Scotty's defense downs, and go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's NP damage up on this turn on Marie. And you guys should be good. Go ahead and NP one final time here, and she will easily handle everything in this wave with nothing having a chance of living. Oof, again, so that is going to be a wrap, guys. I know.
Greetings everyone. Today we're gonna show you how to beat the second and third round only using Arash, or well, his piece. Me and Bob, we were sitting a while for this one, because we at first wanted to do it last year, but we thought like, not gonna work that well. This time we're actually gonna do it. Okay, now here we are for the actual setup and stuff for the whole Arash comps. First of all, you basically need your own Arash, max level. His charge skill needs to be 10, and the rest is a Merlin and a Scotty or Waver. You can mix and match there, depending on what you have, what you don't have. So this comp is not exactly accessible to many people, because you also need a Superscope, and then you also need a friend who is also memeing with you, like who at least puts up a Kscope or a Sakura charge C on their sports setup, so you can use it for the first wave. But overall, this comp is pretty stable actually. It's funny. Like at the beginning, we thought it was a good meme, but it actually works. That's the surprising thing. The only thing where you have to like watch out for maybe for cards is on the second wave in both rounds, in the second and third, because the high HP mob will maybe survive a little bit more HP, but the thing is, 3k on the second round and 2k on the third, it's pretty much doable. Like any cards will do that. And since your Arash won't die, he can even do the cards. Like even if you get full Arash hands, he will actually do it. Okay, here's the actual setup for the whole comp. First, you need well, you need, it doesn't matter. You can have Skadi or Merlin in the front line, doesn't matter. They will move up when the first Arash dies. You basically just need a support Arash with at least a 70% charge, see, something like has more than 70% charge, so you can just clear the first wave. And then you need your own Arash with the Kscope, of course. And as a Mystic Code, you need Anni Blond, because you need the guts from Anni Blond for the second wave. But now it actually just show off how this works. On wave 1, you just need to pop the support Arash. What's it called? Charge, yeah. There you go. And then just go ahead and peek. He will just yeet the wave and yeet himself. And then we can move up to the second turn when Skadi moves up, or Waver, depending on what you use. On the second turn, you just need Merlin's Buster up on your Rush. And then you also, don't forget, you need to use the guts from your Mystic Code, so he doesn't heat himself. And then you can go ahead and yeet him. Or not yeet him in this case. And now on turn 3, you just pop all the charge skills on all the buffs that you have remaining, like you need Merlin's attack up, well, it's also charge. Then you need Arash's charge, brings up to 50%, and then Waver or Skadi's charge, in this case Skadi for 50%, and also the defense down. Mind that the defense down can be a little bit tricky, because in the second round you have to face Jan, and she has a relatively high debuff resistance, so it might be better to actually go with Waver than Skadi, because the defense down might fail. Also, don't forget to use your Mystic Codes Buster up on a Rush. And then you should be good to go to just like yeet with Arash the rest of the fight, and that's it. Peace.
I don't know if you guys can tell, my voice is beginning to go a little bit here at the end, so thankfully we're done. That was a lot of comps, but again, I hope we provided you guys enough opportunities, enough options for you guys to find something that should work across all the nodes with this video. Again, this is going to round up the Gilfest guides for us. We've now done arts, quick, and buster guides, so if you want, check them out. They will be on the channel, available for you guys to watch. And as always, guys, do understand we are already going to be working on Christmas now, try and stay ahead of this, and I'll still keep producing guide content for you guys. So if you like this, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe. It definitely helps the channel out. And if you want, check me out weeknights on Twitch at 7 p.m. Eastern. I always stream FGO, or at least begin with that, so it's always a good time to catch up and ask questions for me there if you guys need. In the meantime, guys, be sure to join the Discord too. We got a great community on there. They're always willing to help out. We got a friend code exchange channel, guides channel, everything you guys could possibly need to help you guys in FGO. So see you guys for the next video. Again, thank you guys for watching, and good luck and happy hunting.